Okay, good morning, everyone. The first thing I would do is pull out the HDMI cord so I can modify my slides, just so I'll be on the time limit. So in the meantime, I would like to know who wants to go to grad school. Can everyone raise their hand if they do? Does anyone know how to get there? Does anyone have a thought about how to get there? No one does? Okay, well, today you'll learn about what to do. And right here. Perfect. All right, let's break it down. Okay, so today I will be talking about the trials and tribulations of graduate school and how to make your impact. So today I will be covering several things. So the first one is beginning with an oath that I actually say in the mirror every day so that I believe that I'm confident in myself, that I can achieve great things, and I believe that when this happens, I have a transformation in my mind and I carry it out. The next thing I'll talk about is my journey from undergraduate to graduate school, and the next thing is how do you make the journey count, renewing your mindset to a champion's mindset, and the structure of graduate school and the trials and tribulations of graduate school year 1 and 2. And then I'll stop there and I'll take questions, and then I won't talk about the last two. You can talk about that individually with me, and then I'll point you to some sessions that will go more in depth than what I would have. So the first thing is the beginning oath. So who would like to read the beginning oath? Does anyone want to come up here and read it? No one? Oh, this is too early, I guess. So the idea here is remember you're only as good as your limits. So tell yourself there are no limits. Oh, you want to read it? Yes. Come up here. Yes. Come on. I like participation. It should be interactive at all times, so you can stop me, you can ask a question, it's okay. Yes, come on.
Sure.
So thank you for reading it. Go right ahead.
Remember, you are only as good as your limits. So tell yourself there are no limits. Remember, you are only as good as your competition. So tell yourself there is no competition except for yourself. Remember, you are only as mighty as your weakness. So whatever weakness you possess, do not tell others, and in a private setting overcome them so that you can master the world. Remember to imbue others with confidence, practical information, and optimism, and say how you achieve it, because you are only as good as your legacy that you leave behind. Like I have told each of you before, you must do better than me so that everyone realizes that we are equal to them. Therefore, meet every difficult challenge and overcome it. Cry and complain, but never give up. Speak up when you need help, because you cannot be the best without help. Pray even if you do not believe, it never hurts to try something new in the pursuit of success.
So, thank you. So, hopefully, everyone can take an imaginary signature, and you've signed it, and now you're ready to start the journey of graduate school. So, where did I get my start? So I was this young guy thinking I knew about everything, because when I was in my town, everyone called me the dictionary. So I was like, okay, I'm very confident I can do this. I can go to undergrad, I'll be successful. So in the very first small picture that you see, it is me with other people. These people were chosen by two fraternities, Alpha Kappa Alpha and Alpha Phi Alpha, to actually start a mentorship through the community and push us forward, because there were not enough minorities that were in STEM or business or anything in period from our community impacting the world that had a master's or a PhD. So my mom told me that I didn't know anything about being black, because all I did was play Pokemon and video games. So she said, you're not going to UNC Wilmington, you're not going to Chapel Hill, you're not going to UNCG. I got in those schools, and she was like, no, you're going to Winston-Salem State. She was like, I'll tell you about it later. So I discovered that I was not too black, as she would say at the dinner table. So actually going to Winston-Salem State changed myself for a lot of reasons, because it taught me about the nurturing aspect of mentoring that I actually still carry on today. So when I was at Winston-Salem, they told me that summer internships were very important. And that's the key, one of the defining factors that'll help you get into graduate school and actually build your fortitude to push forward. So if you have never been able to acquire a summer internship, I would suggest starting with your own institution. So that's what I did. In 2007, I did that. And then I progressed to do others. So in 2008, there was an opportunity to do two summer internships at the same time. One at Campbell University and one at Duke University. So I did both. So as you can see, these are little pictures, and if you notice, with my personality, I love people, so I'm very extroverted. I'm like 95% on the big personality scale for extrovertedness. These are the people that I experienced the journey with at each stage. But the one that was the defining factor was at Duke at first. Duke taught me that I could be just like everyone else, because I was at Winston-Salem State and other people were at Princeton and Harvard and Yale, and I'm just like, wow, I'm here. I can do this. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can't be as smart as these guys. So that was my first exposure at listening to other people that were in the same summer program with me, that looked like me, but that were at different institutions. So it was amazing. And then at Campbell, I found out I was not interested in pharmacy at all. So there's always a good reason to have summer internships, because it lets you know what you're interested in and what you're not. But the thing that I captured at Duke was self-signaling. And so I carried that forward until University of Wisconsin. And like Dr. Adams said, that's where I met her. If you see, there's a picture of her. And then also there were other people there that I met as well. And one person that impacted my life forever was where I'm in the red shirt. That's Charles. Charles had all the confidence in the world. He taught me how to speak Spanish. He taught me how to dance. He taught me everything. He was like, you gotta be good for the ladies. It was just hilarious. So I learned so many different things at each one of my internships. And it was very fascinating. But through the year, I joined a MARC program similar to the LSAMP program, but we just didn't have LSAMP there. And it allowed me to mentor not only myself, but mentor people that were younger than me. So I got exposure to doing both and maybe realizing I wanted to be a PI. And then I also got to work at Wake Forest through the MARC program. So what does failure look like? So we need to talk about this, because this is the second step of getting into graduate school. I applied to graduate school. I had an interview at Minnesota. Minnesota said, you're maybe not ready for graduate school, because I didn't know how to interview, okay? At my school, they were like, yeah, you got an interview, you're good, but there was no preparation for it. But then Baylor was like, I'm not sure if we want to fly you, so we're going to accept you on a limited basis. So I was like, okay, I'm about to go to a PhD, Baylor College of Medicine, it's going to be good. Then I get a phone call back 1 week later and say, well, we've decided not to accept you. And this is Gail Slaughter, who I had met at a conference, and I was just like, okay, what's going on? They're like, well, we don't think that you have the same level of expertise as everyone else, so let's put you in the post-bac. So I was devastated, and I went to the post-bac angry and with no confidence. So how do you deal with that? Well, there's a couple ways you can deal with that. You can say that creed and get in your face every day. You tell the mirror you're mad at it, which is yourself. And then you try to go on and pick up the pieces. But you have to have mentors in place to pick you up, because this journey alone is difficult, and you won't make it alone. No matter how good you are, no matter how talented you are, you need someone to hold your hand. So get used to people wanting to help you and accept help. Because as a minority, you feel like sometimes you're alone and you don't want help, but you do need the help. So try to find something that's common ground. Nobody has to look like you to help you propel you forward. It's just, do they care enough to propel you forward and listen to the differences that you have to make an impact in your life? So when I was at Baylor, I did get angry a lot. Baylor worked with me on so many levels, my professional development, my attitude. They understood. And there was a couple other people that were like that too. I was like, Baylor's throwing shade at me. But in the process, I was like, I'm going to get even. So I had 4 interviews out of 6 schools that I applied to. I applied to UNC Chapel Hill, Vanderbilt, Baylor, UAB, Michigan, and Duke, and I had 4 interviews. Duke didn't accept me. They said that my GRE score was too low. But they said, but you seem like you're doing well. To this day, Winston-Salem has a joint program with Duke, and they laugh at them all the time and say, see what could have been, because my mentor is my advocate, so remember that. One of my mentors that I'll show you, he always would advocate for me and say things. So as I continued my journey, I was able to overcome things, and through those failures, it impacted me so much. So this morning, one of my undergrads asked me, he was like, I was in the poster competition, and he was like, do you think I'm gonna win? I was like, I do believe that you're equipped to have all the tools to win, but what happens if you don't win? And he was like, well, I'll be angry. And I told him, I was like, when did my success happen? He was like, well, not in undergrad. I was like, that's right, in grad school. So I told him that sometimes you have to fail in order to succeed. That was my first thing that I learned with principles of biology at Winston-Salem State, because there was a mixture of grades. I'm telling y'all, I'm not the perfect candidate for GRE score. I'm not the perfect candidate for GPA. So you're looking at somebody that worked hard to get through where he's at. So during that process, I did do a lot of summer internships. I did give a lot of poster competitions, and I thought I was presenting really well, but I didn't understand the next level. So it's important to present something, but then take it to the next level and start asking deeper questions, the synthesis type of questions. So when you're given a presentation, understand the material that you're doing and then ask the next question. So that's what I started to do in grad school. So I was like, how do I really overcome my failures? So in the top right corner where I'm facing, there's a guy there. His name is Dr. Respris, and his wife, she's a nurse. They took me under their wing and they showed me what black excellence looks like at its finest. I'm talking about, I was amazed. He was in grad school, but he was tutoring every person in the IMSD program. He was doing everything, and he was the first person to make barriers at Baylor College of Medicine. He was the first one to basically win every award. And I was like, I'm gonna be like you, but better. And he was like, that's good, I want that, so come on. That should be always in your statement in your mouth, like, I see my mentor, I wanna be better than my mentor, because I have the tools that my mentor gave me. So while in grad school, I did have fun in the top left corner, and in the bottom left corner, I discovered who I was with my friends. I went through relationship issues, which we'll talk about. And then I had a lab, and I was the only one in the lab in the center where Baylor College of Medicine's at. I was the only person that was of American descent in the lab. Everybody else was Chinese, and one person was Japanese, so it was very difficult. I had to relearn what culture meant, and that was a shock. So the best thing I can tell you is be open-minded at all times, because if you're not open-minded, you will not succeed, because you and I look like this in this conference, but when you get in a pool of people that are in science, we're not all looking like each other. We look like, tiny dots. So you have to realize to be able to integrate. So then at Baylor, I did have a lot of success. There's some awards down there as a paper. That's great, but that doesn't really tell you anything. And then there's graduation. That tells you a lot. And at the bottom, there's family. So the first thing is, how did I get into grad school? A champion's mindset. I had you tell yourself that creed that was read was because I want you to develop your own creed that hits home with your own personality. There's two types of mindsets. There's a static and a developed type of mindset. It's also called growth mindset and a fixed mindset. I always live in the growth mindset. The only time I live in a fixed mindset is when I'm practicing no. So that's the only time when I want to tell myself, like, there is no extra movement. My talents won't get me there. It's no. Because right now I need to focus on myself. So there's a way to actually do both of these and actually find a happy medium on what you can and what you cannot do. So I actually use it different than what the definition uses it as. So the thing that's most important is your image. Maya Angelou says, first thing to do is find out who you are and what you want in life. There is no greater agony than burying an untold story inside of you. So when I look at her, I'm like, what does she mean? Does she mean to journal? Does she mean to have a conversation with people? Does she mean to go grab somebody so that I can emulate? So the first thing I talked about is image. Does anyone know anyone on this page besides Dr. Abel for the people at the University of Iowa? Okay, so at the very top, at the very top, these 5 people are all HHMI. They're Howard Hughes medical investigators, whether they're a professor or an investigator. There's a little bit of difference. So at Duke, I met Eric Jarvis. At Winston-Salem State, I met Russell Du Bois-Boyd because Dr. Clark talked about Russell Du Bois-Boyd all the time. He was actually in Brown and Goldstein's lab. Does anyone know who Brown and Goldstein are? Besides the faculty members. They won the Nobel Prize for cholesterol metabolism, so that's a big deal. He was the only person that came out of the lab. Now he's a full professor, and he was HHMI. He's no longer HHMI, but he didn't need it. He has 2 R1s currently. I interviewed in his lab. I got a position in his lab, but then he told me, what other people do you have on your list? And he told me, go to Dale Abel's lab, because he says, I am nowhere capable as Dale Abel. He was like, you idolize me because you got HHMI, but I can't give you what you need right now. I'm still a young investigator. But he's a full professor. So then I was like, well, I've met Dale before on paper because I've seen him before. I was like, ooh, this is a brother in the National Science Foundation book. And I was like, he's nice. And then I just keep flipping. He was the type that was quiet and still. And so what he's doing lately with me is teaching me how to be quiet and still, how not to be the celebrity personality that I am, and how to take my evolution to the next level. So for me, that's been very challenging because he had to readjust everything. So hopefully I'll be like him, and then like I tell him, say, I'm going to be nicer than you. He says, we'll see. So I have a lot to live up to. But I've met each one of these people that are on this page almost through either their work, by reading their articles and understanding who they are and what their principles are about, and talking to the people they have trained. Juanita Merchant's at University of Michigan. That's what got me interested in the University of Michigan, because she actually came to my program. So these opportunities all started from this large picture that's down below. My mentor in there in the black suit is Dr. Clark. I'm still in touch with him today. He's the one that introduced me to all these big time people. For example, Bill Ogden, who's in there, he's a director of the NIH. Of a particular institute. So as the image keeps going on and you're thinking about this in your mind, what's the next thing you need to discover is your identity. So I started to read about myself, but in a different light. I tried to find people that were in popular culture that may have been an actor or someone that I wanted to emulate, and that was Hill Harper. I thought he was very smooth, he was very educated, very articulate, something that I wanted to continue to work on. He has a JD from Harvard, a master's in public administration from Harvard, and he got a bachelor's degree at Brown. And I'm like, oh, he's doing well. So I've learned to adjust my identity a little bit by taking on certain people and taking on certain characteristics from people, and then understanding and asking the question, does this fit my journey? Do I need to do this? Do I not need to do this? So how do you develop a stronger identity? You have to enjoy your journey, but you also have to have action words. Being proactive is very important. So I model myself after Serena Williams when it comes to her ferocity. It's amazing how she thinks about something, she goes for it, she says it, people don't believe it, and she creates this problem so that she can go above and beyond what expectations are. And the same thing with Juan Martín del Potro. And why do I have Dragon Ball Z on here? It's because I lived by the canon. And it was very interesting because Goku never set a limit for himself. And actually on my big personality test, it says I have no limits. And I'm like, that's right, I have no limits. Because I can do things that no one else can do because I believe in myself. So if you believe in yourself, you always have one person already believing in yourself. Then you need to assemble a team. And assembling a team comes with the power of your words. So you have to, and also I have the other picture on there is because this guy was not supposed to beat up Vegeta, who was the prince of the Saiyans. He was, really good. But you got to be the underdog sometimes. And then sometimes you have to set the scene that you're the underdog. And then you accomplish what you can. And then you push yourself to go beyond. So the last thing I want to talk about with a champion's mindset is resolve. If you do not have resolve, graduate school is not necessary. Because you first have to know who you are. So while you're in undergrad, especially for the people that are seniors, develop your resolve this last semester. So that means asking your mentor to put you in situations that you cannot solve on your own, that you cannot overcome on your own. Asking them for the extra work to go above and beyond. Because if you're building your resolve, you have everything that you need to get into graduate school. Because people will tell you no. People will say, you don't look right, you're not the same person as me, you're not going to be able to do it. And with resolve, you have perseverance. So you're able to overcome anything and everything that's in your way. And then access to great verbal and nonverbal communication. So last night, it was talked about 55% of conversation is nonverbal. So I would like to take it to the next level. Start studying people's gestures. So if someone's talking to you like this, does anyone know what this means? Does anyone know what this gesture means if they're sitting there like that? Looking forward, yes. And what did you say, Dr. Rogers? They could potentially have a headache. That is true. But also this position also means superiority. So you have to be careful. So reading people's language and body language is very important. And it also could be a headache if you're talking to me and I'm talking forever. So it could be just simply you do have a headache. So it depends on the circumstances. And then how do you unlock your potential? By having greater challenges than you're capable of handling on your own. So the best thing that I like about Stephen King was this quote: "Talent is cheaper than table salt. What separates the talented individual from successful one is a lot of hard work." So remember that you can be talented all you want, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use it. Okay, you have a key to a door, but if you don't know how to have the potential to unlock the door, and no one's taught you how to do that, it takes a while to discover that. So now we'll talk about the structure of graduate school. Graduate school is very interesting. The summer before, I suggest you take a vacation. So if you see in the bottom right corner, I took a vacation before it started because there was no way I was going to be able to get through it if I didn't have a break. Take time for that summer, don't do anything. Stay in the lab if you're about to get a publication. Make the data rain, so you got to get that publication. But have as much fun as possible. I suggest 1 month before going to grad school, try to acquire access to a syllabus, old notes and old test banks to help with your studying. That's the thing that you ask students when you're on an interview. Not ask them about where to stay, because you can look that up on your own. Not asking them about things like that. Ask about tutoring. Ask about groups that will help me, that look like me. Do they have access to that? And then if you see no one at that school that looks like you, ask why to yourself. Ask a student, then ask a mentor. I asked UAB, why is there no one that looks like me and you're trying to recruit me? And then all of a sudden I found all these people here that look like me. So that changed my attitude completely. You need to ask for things, because on an interview, they're wanting you just as much as you're wanting them. So you have to be, but it's tact though, remember that. Just don't ask in a colloquialism like, where are my people at? Ask, say, hi. I've noticed from this time when we were here, I really enjoyed myself, but during this process, I've noticed that there were not a lot of people of diverse backgrounds. So you see the difference? And I would like to know, do you have those people available? So remember that. So first year is a lot about classes and modules. So at different institutions, there's different type of things. So for example, at Duke, they have modules where you learn a base set of skills, and then your second year, you learn about the actual courses that you'll need to go on. Michigan's set up where they have 3 main courses, and then you pick and choose wherever you want after you're in the interdisciplinary programs. So rotations are challenging. There will be times where you'll say, okay, I don't really want to do this. And there are times where you say, oh, this is really fun. But remember, you want to get through your courses as fast as possible, because you have qualifying exams during your second and third year. There's usually, at the better schools, you have 2 qualifying exams, one that's written, and that's not the grant. That means written, and it's in all of your courses that you've covered. They want to see what you really know. And then the second time is you actually do like a R25 or R21 type of NIH grant. And you can turn that into an F31, so take it seriously, especially if it's on topic. And then sometimes it's off topic, where they want you to generate a new question. Third year, you should really be focusing on career development and exercising your right to focus on your research. And what I mean by that is, don't get distracted so much when you need to go out on the weekends. Go out maybe 1 weekend of a month, and then the rest of the time, focus on your lab, because you're there to do one thing, which is get the research done, and so you get it translated to a paper. The thing that made me successful was I could do a Western blot better than anybody else in the lab. I could do a co-IP better than anyone else in the lab. And I would do all the grunt work that nobody else wanted to do. All the postdocs did not want to weigh mice, did not want to do GTT and ITT. I said I did, because I knew that was my key to be getting on a paper. So anything that sometimes a postdoc doesn't want to do, you do. So like my students, there's 2 or 4 of them there. I tell them, okay, you can run this Western blot. I've paired up each skill level, who's good at what, and they do that. Other things, it's very important to learn that. And then get yourself some undergrads when you're grad students, because it makes a difference. Also, during 4th and 5th year, you should start thinking about your career development. And notice I said it even in 3rd year. 3rd year should be planning your career development. But your ticket to do your career development is your paper and your awards and your honors that you're winning. So that's your currency, because you don't have currency in grad school. It's whatever you say goes by your PI, so not by you. So to exercise your right to be able to do different things, you need to get publications, you need to do well. So during that time, during fourth year, you should already at least have one first author or actually about to write one. And then you should really try to plan for co-authors. And fifth year, if you're about to graduate, you want to have papers. And so if you've already had your first author done, then you should focus on co-authors. So that's what I was telling you. I did the reverse. I focused on co-authors first to build my confidence because I told you I had a confidence issue. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to focus on my research. But I did enough of my research to be competitive. I always went to conferences where people were fifth and sixth years because I was like, I'm going to beat them. You have to have confidence in yourself when you're a second year or a first year. And then sixth year and beyond, get out. So now I'll talk about a couple of trials and tribulations. So everyone avoids certain courses in grad school because they're hard. So for example, in undergrad, I avoided biochemistry. I made a C in biochemistry. Oh yeah, I'm going to get personal and tell you I graduated with a 3.5, but there were some courses that I didn't do too well in. One was biochemistry and genetics. I think my professor really gave me a B when I deserved a B minus. I'll be honest, but I think he knew I needed to stay on scholarship. So I'll be honest with you. Genetics showed up in graduate school, and so did biochemistry. My first test in biochemistry, I made an F. And my professor was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't know. So there were two other courses, and during that time, he was like, I need you to take this course, and I need you to come to my office. He was like, I know you're a good tennis player, so we'll trade tennis for my time. So he helped me that way. So I taught him on the tennis court, and then he helped me in the classroom. He was like, okay, you're gonna do this, 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 and this. So this is what networking is for. You need to tell people what skills you're good at. And then the people that you trust, you tell people what skills you're not good at so that they can help you adjust those. So this is one of those times where you open up. So he helped me with biochemistry. The next two exams, I got A's. I was really excited. So then I passed the class with a B. That's really good. Thanks. I appreciate that. So still to this day, biochemistry is a struggle. So my students, they always think we're working on math because they need help. No, AJ needs to be reminded that he needs help too. So I always review my basics. So that's why we have so many tests in class. So I review my basics. Now you know the real reason. That's only because you're about to graduate. So then, you can't tell the other ones. So then classes in undergraduate studies that you avoided because of the rigor. So if you're avoiding a class because of that, get tutoring and try it anyway. Because it's better to mess up in undergrad where you can work on it and take it again if you need to than in grad school. Because in genetics, let's talk about that. Now let's talk about academic probation because AJ's done everything. Yes, AJ has plenty of awards and you hear all these great accolades, but there's things that happen along the way that were not good. I was on academic warning, academic probation, and almost about to fail out of grad school because of genetics. So in cell division and also in genetics, I didn't pass the first time. I had to take both of them again. So yeah, I know you're like, wow, you did all these things. You got a PhD from Baylor, all these great things, but you're like, are you serious? I'm trying to tell you that's why I tell you about the resolve, because you can't give up and you have to seek out help. So you have to find out who is not good at something and who is good at something, because the people that you want to focus and hang out with are maybe not the best people to hang out with when you're studying in grad school. So not being able to work in a group with certain people because they don't look like you is very bad. So think about that. And then letting go of if you're in a big fish type of deal, if you're in a small pond or a big fish in a bigger pond, let that attitude go because you're not nice is what you think you are. Because grad school is the great equalizer, so you want to be humble when you're going through that process. And that's the last point on that one. And then letting go of who you were to get where you want to be is very important because even as a postdoc, I've had to reinvent myself drastically. So then we're almost to the end of the presentation so you guys can ask questions. So the next thing is stress and time management. So who has a problem with stress right now? I know I do. Okay, so what would someone share with me that what type of stressful situation is someone in right now? Can someone give me an example? It doesn't matter. What is it? Yes. So organic chemistry. So you got to know someone. You got to know someone that's doing well in organic chemistry, right? Besides the professor, right? So I know if you're not necessarily don't have that, you can always Google it on YouTube. And organic chemistry, what I did was go to the Indian Institute of Technology, and they taught me organic chemistry. They were my best friend. And then when I went to the group, I always had a formulating of a group. I was like, okay, we have to study together and make practice quizzes, make practice questions. and from multiple test books, and you assign problems, you delegate. You say, okay, I'm taking this book, and we're going to do all the sections for SN1, SN2, E1, E2 out of this. We're going to do all the NMR out of this, and then we're going to do this and this. And then you go as a group to the professor, and you say, okay, we want our work check, we want to do this. You have to go the extra mile. So time management, sticking yourself to say, okay, this schedule is important. We're going to study this many times, and then I'm going to study this many times by myself. So sacrificing some things right now is more important. And then when you get to the weekend, like me, I go play tennis. I hit the crap out of the ball. I'm mad at Dr. Abel. I'm mad at Dr. Pereira. Oh, I hit the ball. I imagine it's their face, because you can't do that in real life. But it helps. So that helps with the stress. The time management is setting up and organizing your schedule and sticking to it. And when you learn more about your personality and how you learn, that's the key thing about getting inside your mind and say, okay, if I'm learning this way and this person's learning this way, how can we work together? This is one way to overcome your trials in grad school. And remember, stress will occur. And it's okay to talk to your friends about it and hang out with your friends sometimes, but you also have to reinvent how you deal with stress. And what I mean by that is it's actually okay to go to a counselor, because in grad school there will be times where you feel like you're in a group but you're all alone and you need someone to talk to. So I advise all of you guys that counseling is healthy. As a minority, a lot of times we don't seek out counseling because we look at it as taboo, especially for African Americans. Sometimes we're taught God will fix everything. Well, God gave us the mind to go get help because he gave us a tree, not a chair, right? So the tree is something that we take and we invent. Right? No. God invented the tree, then we take the chair, and that's what he gave us, the intellect to actually mold it into something. Or the universe created it, just in case someone doesn't believe in God, and that's okay. So then the next thing is classes are priority. When you're in grad school, the first year is that you have to take on your courses. Your PI will convince you that the research is the most important thing. So what you can do is appear that you've done more than you can. So my key thing is, let's say you have an off week. That's the week in grad school, or you have a week, 2 weeks before going to grad school to start your rotation. Start early with your rotation, so then you can carry it on, and then you already have the progress building. And then when you can't be in lab, show up to the meeting, show up to the work in progress for the department, show up to everything, and then have questions prepared, because that's the best that you can do, because courses are hard. And at Baylor, for example, we took 4 courses, 3 credit-hour courses, taking a whole textbook plus papers every week. That's difficult. And then you have seminar, you have journal club. It's ridiculous. So don't spend too much time in the lab, but you need to make enough of an impression that they're like, oh, he has potential, or she has potential to do this. And remember, important advice, you have to find the balance of what can work for your rotation, because if you have to please your PI to get into the laboratory, but you do not want to sacrifice all your time because you have classes. Academic probation is the worst, because they always meet with you every Monday asking, what have you done to improve your study time? And then they scold you. They're like, I thought you were going to be excellent, but I guess you weren't. It was too much hype. So you don't want to go through all of this. I'm serious. I went through all of this. I'm trying to tell you so you don't have to go through this. And then for the people that had a low GRE score, I'm going to tell you, my GRE score was horrible. Can anyone guess on the old scale, like what a horrible GRE score is? I was a little bit better than that, thank God. So for minorities, on the old scale, 900 was looked at as potential enough to be accepted. So it was looked at kind of like a 1100. I made a 980. The most of my score was math. I did not understand vocabulary whatsoever. So that, just because most of my score was math, they were like, okay, and he can kind of write, so we're okay. But that's why I had to do a post-bac, because my courses were not rigorous enough to prove my worth by GRE, because they said that I was going to have GRE is only predictive of what you'll do your first semester in grad school. And it was darn right. I passed 2 courses, didn't get an A in none of them, and then I failed 1 course. So that's what it predicts. So don't look at it as your defining factor, because I'm someone up here that has 26 awards when I finished grad school, and I had 15 publications, okay? And 2 of them were first author. Thanks, but the point is, like, you can achieve beyond what you set yourself to believe. So if the test says that you made a 980, that's not the end result. And the reason for that is because of friends. So you have to learn to have a good balance. So on the very first slide, I showed you in the left-hand bottom corner were friends. Friends help me a lot, and you have to realize that they will turn over too. People will lose confidence in what you're doing. They sometimes won't talk to you because you think you're too smart. So there's going to be an ebb and flow of relationships, and that's why I said you need to be in counseling, because grad school is not for the faint of heart. But you can do it. Everyone in this room can do it. Then the next thing is be aware when a relationship is not working for you. Do not be afraid to change it. That's girlfriend or boyfriend, and then also friends. If they're not able to support your dream, they're not for you. You don't want them in your circle. I have the same friends from high school that I have now. I have the same friends from undergrad that I have now. I have a limited inner circle. I tell everybody what they need to know about me and what they think they want to hear about me, but they don't know how I really work, okay? That's for my private friends, so that's what I talk to them about. And then take the time to find friends to release your stress. So like in grad school, you have a cohort. And so you want to manage your time with that cohort and say, okay, we're interacting, we're talking because that's important. And then you need to not forget about your family. So when your PI tells you to stay home, and he means at the house, in Houston, don't necessarily listen to him all the time, because even if it's for a weekend, you need to go see your family. Save some money, go on a flight. If it's just a weekend, just interact with them so you can say, okay, I am still sane. That's so important, because I missed 3 Christmases, 3 Thanksgivings. My family was like, where are you at? They don't understand. Because sometimes people will keep you in lap. That's just the traditional Chinese culture, so I had to understand that. I didn't even get to go sometimes for when there was deaths in my family, so I had a lot on my plate. And even in grad school, I had multiple deaths from family members. My aunt actually was in Houston, and she committed suicide because of a bad relationship. So I was dealing with a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. And this was each year. Something new was happening with my family. So you have to understand when you have advocates, you need advocates at every level to help you understand what it is that you need to do. And always have an emergency fund, because your emergency fund will help you go places when you need to go places for a weekend. So build your emergency fund now. So instead of making it rain when you go on these internships, make it rain in the bank and save it, because it's so important, because you need it for when you go to grad school, because you will want to take a trip to Canada on the weekend, or you want to go to Mexico on the weekend and sit on the beach, or you want to go to Washington, D.C. so that you can see there's some color. So you have to realize all these things, I did those things. So I'm telling you, it's very important that you do that. And then qualifying exam is the end-all, know-all. I watched a brother not pass his qualifying exam twice, but the dean of the school advocated for him so he passed. And now he's at an internship, and then he translated into a job, and now he's a medical liaison, and he's making a lot of money, more than I am at my postdoc, probably triple what I'm making at my postdoc. I'm like, so never give up. So I know. But one day I'll have a salary like Dr. Abel, which his salary is like 20 times what that guy's salary is, so I'm okay. So understanding your capacity to learn. So how do you learn? That's the most important thing to discover about yourself. And then when you're asking a question, don't be afraid to say, okay, who, what, when, where, how, and why, because you need to know everything about it. So when I was doing my qualifying exam on estrogen receptor, I was like, who? And going from there. And then you have to go all the way down and really get into that. And determining your focus, which is the last thing before questions. What is more important, your goal or individual achievement? They're both important, but remember you're in grad school to accomplish one thing. Get a paper so you have your ticket to graduation. And then worry about your individual achievements. Make your individual achievements at home, put them on the refrigerator, and cross them off one at a time. But your main focus while you're in grad school is that. Your paper or the weekend off. Like I told you, you can have a weekend off after you've completed an important experiment and it works. And then you kind of keep doing that month by month, a small reward or going out to eat. Studying or really practicing for the qualifying exam. So what I mean by that is you can practice, the qualifying exam by reading, writing, and answering every question. But then studying is a whole nother thing. You can tell yourself you're studying, but you're really not. So you have to choose to study, and if you're not able to study by yourself, find people that are taking the qualifying exam with you to do that. So these are questions, and the things that are on this slide is, for example, if you work hard, like during a summer internship, this is one of my students. He just got his master's degree at UAB, and then now he's got accepted to med school, and he was on one of my papers. And then this is Sharif, and this is Yang. Yohang is already in grad school. He got accepted to the #9 engineering program in the country. He's getting a PhD. And Sarif will be accepted to the postbac program that he wants to go to, which is Johns Hopkins the most. But if he doesn't, there's other postbac programs that he will be accepted to, and then he will be an MD PhD. And you have to have advocates that believe and will speak it for you and speak it over you. And then give back. Do not sell yourself short. Your information that you've learned through your PhD or your journey that you're continuing, give back. That's what this top one is. I always go back to my institution to give back, and I mean Winston-Salem State, because you never forget where you come from. Don't forget that, yes, I have a PhD from a top 20 institution, but I got my start at Winston-Salem State. So remember, wherever you start, that's where you finish at. So that means the next time that you see somebody, you should have that person already launching towards their goals. So thank you for your time, and I'll take questions. Go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Hinton.
Hey.
If you can go back at any point in time in your life and do something differently, what point would that be, and what would you do differently?
So what is necessary for graduate school acceptance? Thank you. My students know me pretty well. The one thing that I would change was my GPA. That's the only thing. I would not repeat anything else differently, because what defined me at the beginning is what defines me now. And if I changed something, I would have never met Dr. Slaughter, who changed my life at Abercamps in 2009. When she had a conversation with me and she says, "It's so interesting that you know about GPCRs." I thought it was a hobby, just to learn about science in some way, but she was like, "You can get a PhD." That was the first person that told me that. And she looks nothing like me, knew nothing about me, but she is the most down-to-earth and most realist person I've ever met in my life. So I wouldn't change anything. Any other questions? It's okay to be candid, because this is an opportunity for you to find out anything that you really want to know. Don't be afraid to ask, because a mentor is there. I'll talk about anything. I'm a very open person. Yes?
So why did you decide to go to grad school?
So in the very first picture I showed you, one of the people that was in my hometown died of a glioblastoma. His name was Cameron Underwood, and that's why I became a scientist, because I wanted to stop what happened to him. He was the lead quarterback at our high school. He was a phenomenal guy. Had a 3.8. He went to undergrad at NC State, and then he also had sleep apnea like me, and then he couldn't breathe on top of having the cancer treatment, over and over again, and he died. So that's why I got my PhD in cell biology, to work on the molecular level of neuroscience, because I wanted to change the impact of people like me, and also wanted to study hypertension, because a lot of people in my family have died from it. So that's why. Yes?
What was the most challenging thing that you faced as a whole, like through your whole journey, and how did you overcome that?
So, in grad school, I was married. In grad school, I was married, right? I'm no longer married. So my postdoc career, I told you I done did everything, you guys. So nothing's off the table. And postdoc has been my hardest time. And having an advocate, I met Dr. Abel at a conference, and he told me, he says, "You're nice, but you ain't too nice." I love when someone will tell me that. And then that's why I like Dr. Rogers. He's like, "Yeah, you're doing all right. What's the next thing?" I like that. I like people like that, because it helps me to prove them wrong. And they know that I need that. He will never tell me that I'm any good until the day I get a faculty position. Then he'll say, "You're all right." I know that about him, and that's why I'm excited about it. So that has helped me the most, because to answer your question, not be so tangential, but you need the background for the answer. In postdoc, it has been the most challenging thing in my career. It has made me level up, as in my maturity has made me level up in how I talk to individuals and how I perceive people. I had an innate racism problem, and I did not know it. Dr. Abel had to tell me that. I was like, I'm biased towards people because of how I was treated throughout my life. I did not know that. I made assumptions about people beforehand. I did not know that until this day, but I have mentored and menteed so many, I have so many mentees of so many different colors, but I never knew that. So Dr. Abel pointed it out. And he's like, you're still bitter and you're still angry about certain things. So he's like, you need to go back to counseling. There's so many things that I have discovered about being a postdoc. And this has nothing to do with just my marriage. And at the same time, I had marriage, it was bad. So the bottom line was I also had 6 months where I was not productive at all. But him and Dr. Prayer covered that up because they believed in me. And now I done discovered something absolutely amazing, that insulin may regulate mitochondrial intermembrane fusion without open 1. So who would ever thought? That might be the nature paper I've been looking for after I figure out, and my kids help me figure out the screening process of what protein it may be regulating that. So what I'm saying is when you have people that believe in you and don't give up on you, you can have anything happen. And throughout that time, nobody knew because I was making it rain on posters because I won like a poster competition against all the postdocs when I got here. You know, I already have a Bureau's Welcome Grant. Everybody thinks everything is always so good in people's lives, but you have to realize people go through stuff too. And it's how well you can cover it up, but get help in private. So I still say that creed to the day. You work on your weaknesses in private and you talk to the people that matter that will help you get to where you need to be. So my struggle right now is my current struggle. I'm in this postdoc and it's the hardest thing I ever have done in my life. I thought like, I need to go to San Francisco or San Diego because that's where I got accepted to all these places. And I was like, I'm so glad I didn't go there because nobody would have cared about me the way that Dr. Abel does. You know, he also paid for another of my postdoc interviews. Nobody knows that. He paid for another of my postdoc interviews and said, you'll never find a mentor like me. Told me that. And I believe it now because anybody else after 6 months and not producing anything would have kicked you to the curb. Seeing I had all these problems and issues, and I didn't know I had all these problems and issues, I needed somebody to tell me that, it's priceless. And now I'm so motivated and determined, it's changed my life. Everybody tells me that. They're like, man, you done got so much better. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, dang, it's not that bad, you know, but so it's a good thing. So, yeah. Any other questions?
We'll do one. Should we do one more question and then think?
One of the things you talked about was like your family and how important that connection is. Mm-hmm. And with our students, one of the things that we're really looking at is like, how do we like make that connection like with the families, like to help our students? Because sometimes we feel like there's a disconnect. So do you have any advice on how as faculty that we can help our students and also reach out to the parents at the same time?
Okay, that's a great question. So my dad runs the Shallow Center now at my hometown. So that's like mini Ground Zero. That's the hood, y'all. And so my dad actually goes out and teaches them like, oh, you can go to this college. So actually opening up a parents' night and showing the lab, maybe find one lab that's legit, that doesn't have anything, you know, radioactive, anything that parents can go into, and actually have a parents' night, a night where the kids thank them for the support that they're giving them. And if they're not giving the support, still thank them, because then they'll start giving you the support because they recognize the hard work that they did to put food on the table, clothes on their back to be able to get them where they're at. So having an opening night and explaining things in layman's terms. So then you have to work on the sales pitch, because that's a whole other thing that we'll talk about in the next session when it's about grit and how to sell yourself as a complete package. So that's important too, so that they can understand on ground zero, like, okay, we're doing this and why we're doing this, and letting them do things so they see how hard it is, so they have respect for their kids about what they're doing. So letting them try to run a PCR, like Lori talked about. I had problems doing that. So that's why we stay away from RNA in the lab. We do everything Western blot. See, I have problems too. So yeah, that's why. All right.
Yeah. Should we, I didn't know, how are we doing? Should we be wrapping up? Okay, this has been a great conversation.
You can just ask me afterwards.
Yeah, thank you so much. I did want to just have a few announcements, and I do want to thank AJ, so stay right there. Let's do it right now.
Okay.